And joining us now is the attorney who is directly involved in this Alien Enemies Act case, Lee Gelernt, Deputy Director of the ACLU's Immigrants' Rights Project. Lee, I understand the ACLU just filed a lawsuit in the Southern District of New York to protect future deportees to El Salvador. Tell us about this.
Yeah, so we have filed a habeas action in the Southern District of New York. We intend to file more habeas actions, obviously one in Texas, where most of the men are detained. And I just want to be clear about what the Supreme Court did. The Supreme Court absolutely did not bless the use of this wartime authority during peacetime. It simply didn't reach those questions. All it said was you need to use what's called habeas corpus to file your actions. But the critical takeaway from the court is that it actually, on the substance, rejected the government's position. The government was arguing in court that it did not need to provide any due process notice to the individuals, so that they could just whisk them away like they did with hundreds of other men. The Supreme Court said emphatically, you must provide them with notice, and not just notice, but meaningful notice so they can actually go into court and challenge their removal. So that's the real takeaway, notwithstanding some of the quick headlines, is that the Trump administration didn't really win anything. It just simply said, it won the technical point that you should file in habeas corpus in different places, but not the substance. They wanted the ability to summarily remove people without giving them any notice. And the court could not have been clear that is not permissible. You must give people notice. So the case is just going to start over again now with the fact that the government can just whisk people away.
So you're saying they really didn't win here, although they're taking victory laps at this point. When you talk about due process, Lee, I think, in practical purposes, is it going to work? I mean, aren't there barriers if they have to have individual filings and individual cases? I mean, how are all of these individuals who they are saying should be deported with the Alien Enemies Act going to find counsel in time?
So we're going to file class actions. The fact that it's in habeas doesn't mean we have to do it one by one. Even if we did, we would have test cases, but we're going to file class actions. We've already filed one. We're going to file another one in Texas. So we don't think it would have to proceed individually. Sooner or later, the Supreme Court's going to have to rule on whether they can use this wartime authority. We think it's clear they can't use this wartime authority against a criminal organization during peacetime. But that case, that issue will probably get back up to the Supreme Court. I think the Trump administration is not really accurate in claiming victory. I think when you look at the substance, they lost. They wanted the ability not to give any notice and people just whisk people away. As I said, when you look at the opinion, it could not have been clear. They were rejecting the Trump administration's position on the substance and just saying, file in a different court. But there is no victory here for the Trump administration. If anything, it's an enormous victory for us. The court could have said, you don't need to give these people notice, could have agreed with the Trump administration. Yeah, you don't need to give them notice, just remove them. The court could not have been clear, all 9 justices.
But some people have already been removed without that due process, right? And we don't know the specific evidence that the Trump administration claims to have that everybody they removed are gang members. We've certainly heard a number of stories from family members and lawyers of cases where people had been deported, they believe, just because of a tattoo that might have been a misidentification, right, might not have had anything to do with a gang, whether it was a symbol like a crown, for example, that might represent something completely different in an individual's life. So what does this Supreme Court decision mean for those folks who are already in El Salvador?
Yeah, well, so first of all, you're absolutely right. We think many, if not most, were misidentified as gang members, and they unfortunately were put on planes. But as Julia said, that's a separate issue. I think Judge Boasberg will have to take that up, whether they violated his order by sending the people there, notwithstanding his temporary restraining order. The fact that the Supreme Court said do it in a different court doesn't excuse them if they violated his order. So that, I think, will continue to proceed. The government's saying, no, Judge Boasberg can't look at that anymore. He absolutely can. And so, but that'll be on a different track from us trying to stop them using the Alien Enemies Act going forward.